I have a tendency to squish things down. If things are good, I tend to just squish it down.
Right.
Like, okay, well, that was a nice thing that happened, but let's just squish that down and
Yeah.
put it over here and not think about it and
Right.
stick to the work. And it's sort of kind of a self-flagellating, again, God knows where this nonsense comes from. I suspect we know. But are you able, I would want this for you. I would want you at this stage to be able to say, wow, I've done so much good work, and I am Nathan Lane, or feel some of that.
Well,
I think it might be hard for you.
Sure. It's funny you say that. I had my husband was here visiting, and we had dinner. I had a birthday recently, and we were sitting there, and I said to him, I really appreciate. Maybe it's age. I just appreciate. I have a lot of gratitude for what I've been able to accomplish with so much about luck and opportunity as Ina Garten says, be ready when the luck happens. And
yeah.
But the amount of talented writers and actors and directors I've gotten to work with, and it's I'm very grateful and it's something to not only be proud of, but just not that you're resting on your laurels, but you feel like I have accomplished something.
Yeah.
And then it's meaningful to people, and then whether it's, The Lion King or The Birdcage or these, there were huge things in my life, and they meant something to someone means everything.
Jumping back to, I was in New York doing the late night show when the producers happened, and it was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
That
rarely happens.
I mean, it was a lightning strike, but it was more than that. There are hits on Broadway, but something happened and everyone agreed that this is the greatest thing that's ever happened in New York City. And it was lovely to be around that. And then I remembered thinking, oh, Jesus, you and Matthew have to walk around and everybody wants a ticket. Every policeman, every guy who's there to open a manhole cover, and they're not going to buy, Nathan, that you can't get them a ticket. What do you do about that?
The sanitation workers were a big demographic for that show. But yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, like, there's Hamilton, and that was sort of another one.
Yep.
But I think that show was it was about, obviously, Mel Brooks,
Sure. Yeah.
That genius. And, but it was also kind of a zeitgeist hit. You had come out of a long period of dark British musicals, and there hadn't been anything that was kind of a return to old-fashioned musical comedy. Unapologetic. A sort of a Valentine, and yet satirical at the same time, and with, arguably one of the greatest comic plots ever conceived.
Yes.
And so
we need this thing to fail, which is such a great idea.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just it's the beauty of that. And I certainly was this huge fan of the film. I literally saw the film for the first time in a revival house here in L.A. and with an audience filled, screaming their heads off. And I was like, Zero Mostel, I'd never seen anyone so huge on screen, physically and emotionally, and yet truthful.
Yeah.
And gritty and just hilarious, and the combination of him and Gene Wilder. And so the notion that when all of that started percolating, I started to hear, he's writing a musical. David Geffen is trying to talk him into writing this musical based on the movie. And I thought, well, it is a backstage story. It makes sense, and then somebody mentioned, they had talked to him about it, and then I was in. This was the weekend. I hate to mark it this way, but it was the weekend Princess Diana died.
Yeah.
And he wasn't my husband then, but my now husband and I were at the Ritz in Paris. We went down to the pool, and in the pool was Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. And my husband's favorite actress was Anne Bancroft. And he turned to me and he said, "That's Anne Bancroft." He said, "I'm too nervous. I can't swim in front of Anne Bancroft." And he went upstairs. So I said, okay. And then I went to the pool, and I had met them. This is like the benchmark. Laughter on the 23rd floor. They came.
Yep.
They had come to see it because there was a character based on Mel in the play, about which he said, "That character based on me, it's a tissue of lies." Anyway, they were very gracious.
But I loved it.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we said hello, and I got in the pool, and Anne was swimming laps. She left, and he stayed in the pool with me, which I thought odd. And then he swam over to me, and he said, "I'm working on a musical based on my movie, The Producers, and I think you and Marty Short are the only two people in the world to play those parts." And I was like, wow. I said, that would be thrilling. I would be so honored. And then, time passed. He had to write it with Tom Meehan. And then, Marty had just done, brilliantly, Little Me. He won the Tony. And he had spent a lot of time in New York, didn't want to be away from the family again that long. And so someone brilliantly suggested Matthew Broderick. And I thought, that's in some ways, that's a better combination.
Yes.
His energy and my energy, as it turned out it was. And he was, sensational. And it was the beginnings of this journey that we took together, being in the middle of that tornado.
Yeah. And
you think, you'll never, the hype, how can you live up to the hype? And then, it was the great thing, as you said, all these people, it's Barbara Walters and Kofi Annan are here after the show, and you go, really? It's Bishop Desmond Tutu. Loved it. He's coming up the stairs. So you go, wow.
Mrs. O'Brien is here.
Alan Greenspan.
Yeah.
And, it was people like that. You couldn't believe it. But the people I loved would be like Harvey Korman.
Sure.
Coming back and saying, when you did that little piece of physical comedy, and you go, these are people who understand what it is we're doing.
Also,
in a way.
These are people that you watched when you were a kid.
Sure.
To me, that was, nothing will ever be more magical than when I get to meet the people that I saw. And sadly, there aren't many left, but I saw them on TV, and they made me laugh when I was 8, 9, 10, 12, 15. And if they noticed me in any way and saw what I was doing and liked it, I think, okay, I can die now.
Oh, sure.
It's not going to get better than this.
Tim Conway.
Yes, exactly.
I met him. These people you idolized. Or Carol. Carol Burnett, came back and she got emotional. And she said, this reminds me of the old days of what Broadway was like. And it's like Mel is throwing this huge party, and you and Matthew are the hosts. And it's, it just was, it was that especially in the beginning, that show, the joy of it and the anarchy of it, like anything could happen.
Yeah. Because
it had that, that tone to it. But it's, that's kind of a once in a lifetime thing. When that happens.
It's not, because I've got a new idea.
Oh, no. The sequel?
Spartacus.
Oh, Spartacus.
The musical.
Spartacus the musical.
And I think you're perfect. Not as Spartacus.
No, I'm his lawyer. You know what? You all can't be called Spartacus.
There's a legal issue.